And sure, we can go with the flow, but we're going with the flow. Let's go with the flow to like an end point. Let's have a goal. Let's not just go with the flow and just go with the flow for no reason. Hello everybody. Hi, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Deborah and I am super duper excited to have you here on my channel, so thank you for stopping by. But yeah, I hope y'all are doing so well. It is oh my god, excuse me. Why is it that every time I come on here, there's just something off about my voice and I have to clear my throat like 10 million times? I think it's a hazard of living by myself and not interacting frequently with a lot of people. That being said, I do talk to myself quite a bit, like, have no doubt about it. I have full-on conversations, arguments, therapy sessions with myself. But sometimes if I've like gone several hours without speaking, which is the situation for today, the first time I speak, my voice just gets so cracky and just weird. I apologize for that. But yeah, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about more dating and relationship stuff. Yay! And today we're going to be talking about a topic that is, I think, to me, kind of interesting, kind of fascinating, and I still don't know where I stand on this. I feel like I'm such a diplomatic person, and I'm clear cut on like very few things. I think with like life and like a lot of things, there are like so many gray areas and it's hard to really firmly stand in one place or the other, and I don't really strive or aspire to do that in like a lot of things. I feel like they're not, as long as they're not like big moral questions, it's okay to kind of straddle the line between straddle and sit on the fence. And for this one, I think I am kind of sitting on the fence. So today we're going to be chatting about dating apps and whether or not they have ruined dating. Like I said, I'm not here to argue one side or the other. I feel like there are pros and cons to using dating apps, as with like really any kind of technology or social media platform. There are benefits to it and there are cons and challenges to using it. It all just kind of depends on how you use it, the way other people use it, and there are just like so many factors. So I don't feel like it's like a clear-cut answer, and some people might disagree with me. Some people might think, yeah, it is absolutely clear-cut. Dating apps have ruined dating. And yes, of course, dating apps have kind of revolutionized the way people approach dating, but some people will say dating apps have been good for them and it's helped them find their partner, or they've had success stories with dating apps, right? But yeah, I mean, I feel like I can kind of talk about this because I have been on dating apps for kind of a long time, on and off, obviously, since maybe 2016 or 2017, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, and I don't want to hear it, but I've been on dating apps for a long time, and I've seen the way that they've evolved. I've been on, I think my first dating app that I ever was on Tinder, and I'm just thinking back to that, and I was just like so naive. Man, what I would tell my younger self when it comes to dating apps. But I feel like dating apps have definitely evolved more to be a bit more mindful and kind of conscious in terms of, for instance, I know with some apps, I think with Hinge, for instance, you are required to upload a number of photos, probably even like a video. You have to add a prompt about yourself. You have to answer like a number of questions. And granted, I mean, I've come across apps where people don't like clearly have put no thought into like answering the question. They just give you like one-liners and just kind of fill it out for the sake of filling it out. But yeah, like in terms of whether or not they're bad, I think whether or not we want to say that dating apps are a good or bad thing for dating, I think we've just sort of reached a point of no return, especially like since, the pandemic, where people were forced to, meet online. I feel like meeting organically is kind of difficult now because people know they have the options of downloading an app, answering a bunch of questions, either seriously or unseriously, and they can, within minutes, begin swiping on people's profiles, right? And get some sort of validation that way, or get dates that way, or whatever it is that the goal for dating is, goal with dating is for them. So yeah, it's hard to answer, and I'm definitely not going to be one to say that, I feel like because of the kind of person that I am, I find dating apps to be not easy to use, but definitely it's an option that I'm glad is available to me, because I am quite a reserved person. It's difficult for me to kind of like be my free self with strangers, and I think that's perfectly fine and a perfectly reasonable thing. So dating apps definitely gives me the opportunity to it takes away that barrier or that fear of communication in person, right? But like I said, I feel like, to me, the answer to this question or to this topic is not so clear cut, and there are pros and cons to it. So I'm going to get into the pros right now. Like, what are the benefits of having dating apps? Because I think that they are beneficial, because if they're not, I feel like they probably would not have survived for as long as they have. People would have kind of brushed them to the wayside. So I feel like there are probably some benefits to having dating apps, and here are some of the benefits I think there are. So first, like I said, like I sort of alluded to, I feel like dating apps can be beneficial for kind of awkward people or reserved people or shy people, and they can provide a way to just sort of facilitate a conversation with someone that you're interested in or you're attracted to. You think they've got like an interesting profile, without the fear of having to go talk to them in person or whatever. Like for me, when it comes down to it, I know, like, I'm an interesting person. I've got stuff to talk about, but I just always find it difficult to approach people. And even when people approach me, I can get so like awkward and weird and flustered and bumbly, and it's just, it's difficult. And I feel like I definitely need more practice with this in terms of putting myself out there more. But like, I don't really experience any of that when I know I'm protected by like my cell phone, by like the internet, like it's just a chat. Like chatting with someone online is so much more different than chatting with them in person. And I think that is good, that it kind of helps you put yourself out there and helps you not miss out on dating and finding someone just because you're afraid to walk up and talk to people in person. You get weird and flustered when people walk up and talk to you. So I feel like that is a pro. Some people might think it's not a pro, but to me, it's definitely a benefit of having dating apps. And then I feel like another benefit, and this is more so kind of geared towards more recent versions of dating apps, that sort of requires people, or that enables people to identify what it is that they're seeking. So if they're seeking like a long-term relationship, something short-term, something casual or fun, if they're just looking for friends, I feel like new iterations of dating apps give people the ability to do that. And so for me, I am, looking for a serious, long-term, secure, devoted, exclusive, monogamous, all of the terms, relationships. And so that's one of the first things that I want to see when I come across someone's profile, is if they are looking for the same thing that I am, if they want children, because I want children too, or if they're at least open to having children, obviously with the right person. And that really narrows down, like helps me whittle down my choices pretty quickly, because if someone is still figuring out their dating goals, which, by the way, side note, what is it with people going on dating apps and saying that they're still figuring out their dating goals, or just leaving their dating goals blank? Like, why are you on a dating app? Are people like ashamed to say that they just want something casual, or they're not looking for something serious? It's perfectly valid to not want to get into a serious thing. You might have like your own reasons for why that's the case, and nobody's judging you, but like, don't say you're figuring shit out and really what you mean is you just want to have a casual thing, because figuring things out could mean a lot of things, and at the same time it just kind of means nothing. So that has been like and I think the worst is when people don't even feel anything out. I just take that to mean that they're not serious and they're playing. That has been like my pet peeve recently when it comes to like dating and people's profiles. It's like a number of profiles that I come across, people cannot even answer that basic question. And I think that is like a pro of these dating apps, because it's like, if you can't figure out what the heck you're looking for when it comes to dating, then we're definitely not going to be aligned, because I know exactly what I want, and I'm not going to waste my time with someone who's still quote unquote figuring things out. So I feel like that's definitely a huge benefit of having dating apps, because if you were to meet someone organically in person and you start talking and they seem interested, it might be the case that that they're the kind of person on a dating app that's still figuring things out, or they want like a casual thing. And it's like, at least like, it's like, it gives like a pretty solid baseline in my opinion. We can start on that ground knowing that, okay, we want the same things in theory, and I think that's a great place to start. It really helps me to determine whether or not someone is aligned to me on those like non-negotiables, because that's a non-negotiable for me. And so these are the things that I feel like you can quickly figure out through a dating app or through someone's profile on a dating app, and that kind of thing might not really be possible if you were to meet someone organically, and you'd have to like have several conversations. You'd have to have at least put in some time and effort before you could like start talking about important things like that, right? And I feel like another benefit of dating apps is like, it can be a good way to potentially meet, lots of people within a short period of time. And I feel like if you're trying to get into a serious thing, you really need to put yourself out there and be willing to go on dates and meet many people. And unless you were, I don't see how this is kind of possible if you were solely relying on meeting people organically. Even if you're like match made with friends, your friends have, I guess, a limited number of single friends, but it just really expands your horizons, right? It gives you access to a huge data set. Look at me referring to human beings as data points. It just gives you access to like a huge sample of people, and you can just rapid fire go on dates and see how that goes. And I think that's a benefit. And in the past, when I was really, really desperate about getting into a relationship, that was what I would do. I would just swipe and swipe and swipe and swipe and talk and talk and talk and go on dates and dates and dates and dates. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I feel like I was approaching it from like a place of desperation, and I wasn't clear on, my values and my boundaries. And like, for instance, I would swipe right on people that were ambiguous about their dating goals, and just because I felt like, I just want to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they are open to something. And I think right now at the point that I am in my life, that's like, if someone cannot figure out what their intention is, they can't have access to me, plain and simple. And that is so empowering for me, and it really switches the dynamic and the way that you approach these apps. It just makes you feel like you're in control of who you let into your life, and I think that's a good thing. And I think if you're the kind of person that's just looking to date casually, not looking to get into anything serious, like, the dating app world is your oyster. There's so many options, and I think that might be a good thing and a bad thing. Which brings us to the cons of dating apps. And one of the cons just sort of related to this idea of having lots of people, or feeling like you have lots of people, is that it can make us complacent. It can make us feel like, we have lots of options, so I don't need to take things seriously. I can kind of coast and, go with the flow. I feel like that's like, I hate hearing that term, go with the flow. And I think it's maybe because I'm such a type A control freak. And especially when it comes to dating, it's like, I feel like I'm past the point of going with the flow, and I want something intentional and something mindful and something beautiful. And sure, we can go with the flow, but we're going with the flow. Let's go with the flow to like an end point. Let's have a goal. Let's not just go with the flow and just go with the flow for no reason and just end up wasting our times. But let's have a goal in mind. And once we figure that, maybe this is not going to work, let's put an end to it. Rather than just going with the flow and just keeping things open and fluid. I can't do that anymore. I am way past that. And I feel like, not to be sexist or anything, or I guess maybe to be sexist, because whenever people say not to be fill in the blank, they're being exactly that thing. So I guess maybe I am being sexist. But like, I feel like men are probably more complacent when it comes to dating and feeling like they have lots of options, probably also because they feel like they don't have a quote-unquote biological clock, which is a lie. If you're a man and you're watching this, Google whether or not men have biological clocks. They do. And so men may feel like, they kind of have the time to go with the flow and coast, and they have lots of options, so they're not ready to take things seriously. And if we're talking about like another pet peeve or like another point of confusion for me is when I come across a profile of a man who is in his 40s and he's still figuring things out. That really confuses me. And I do recognize that, society says we should follow this path and end up in like a monogamous relationship, and that might not be for everyone. But like, we all want companionship and all of that, right? And so I feel like a person in their 40s, man or woman, I think at this point, in their 40s should have had 39 and lower to kind of figure out what their version of companionship is. And if a box on a dating app that says what are your dating goals does not fully capture that, there is like a character box, like a bio box, where you can explain what you're looking for. But more often than not, I find that on profiles of older men, it's absent, and they don't know what they're looking for, and they can't put into words what it is that they want. And that is a huge turnoff to me personally. But I think I got sidetracked. But the point is, a con of dating apps can be that it it just allows for complacency, and I think more so with men than with women. And I think another con is that dating apps can probably be dangerous for women, because think about it, we are putting ourselves out there, we are setting up dates with people and with strangers that we don't know, and there can easily be situations when it just kind of goes south, and it just, more often than not, dating apps are just dangerous for women in general, period. I've heard like a lot of dating horror stories about women meeting up with men from dating apps, even in like a public place, and not feeling safe and feeling like, this person was going to do something to them, would hurt them, or they would, make kind of creepy and weird comments. And yeah, I don't feel like I need to say too much about that, but I felt like it's important to point that there's also like a gender imbalance here when it comes to using dating apps. And I'm not saying that for men it's not dangerous too. I mean, I guess I can fathom a situation where a man would also be in danger of meeting up with a strange woman from the internet. But statistically speaking, and just from common sense, it's just more dangerous for women. And I think another con is that I think with like social media, like Instagram and likes and all of that, it can reaffirm people's need to feel or receive validation from getting matches, from a ton of people, from being liked, from having their profiles being liked by a ton of people. And I don't think it's a bad thing to feel validation or feel like people find you attractive, but like if you're only using dating apps to receive that sort of validation rather than validating yourself and reaffirming your own self-worth and loving on yourself, if you're relying on an external app to do that, I think that can be a problem. And I feel like dating apps can't do that, because I'm speaking from experience. There was a point in my life where the more matches I got and the more I matched with quote unquote hot man, the better I felt about myself. And that was because I was deep down hurting, and I hadn't really done a lot of self-reflection or done any kind of healing or therapy to figure out why I was hurting, and to, get better and unearth that and unpack that. And so I was seeking validation from matches and from people swiping on me. And I won't lie to you, it felt good, because obviously it felt good because it, to me that seemed like, it seemed like an affirmation of myself, somebody else affirming my worth, which you don't need someone to do that for you. You can do that yourself because it's there, you have it. You just need to realize and recognize that you're inherently worthy, and you don't need anybody else to show you that. So I feel like dating apps can for sure kind of be a breeding ground for that sort of toxic behavior and cycle. And another con that I feel like is related to the last one is that it can really mess with your self-esteem. And again, I'm speaking from experience. Like, if someone whose profile you thought was very interesting and you thought they were cute and you'd like to meet them, you were hoping that you'd match with them. If they didn't match with you, or if someone you were having a conversation with randomly unmatches you from nowhere, even though you thought the conversation was going well. I've had that happen. So things like that and scenarios like that can truly mess with your self-esteem and your sense of self. And like I said, I know this because I'm speaking from experience. These are things that I have experienced in the past. And obviously there were like a lot of other factors and internal things that I needed to work on, but being on dating apps did not help that. So I feel like, in order, like, if you were to get on dating apps, you have to be intentional about the way you use it. You have to be really safe and secure within yourself and have a decently strong sense of self, a good sense of self-esteem, and a good understanding of your own inherent worth and of value. And so you don't feel defined by matches. You don't feel defined by somebody unmatching you even though you thought they were interesting. You don't feel defined by getting rejected, whatever the case may be. So I feel like, so that can definitely be a con for somebody who is pretty fragile and is still doing a lot of work to heal their inner trauma or wounds or whatever. I have been talking for a hot minute. I'm tired. So I think I'm going to wrap up the video here. I want the biggest takeaway from this to be that the understanding and realization that a dating app is a tool. Plain and simple. Understanding and realizing that regardless of what happens on those apps, you are absolutely worth it. You are absolutely valuable. You're a lovely person, deserving of love and affection and someone that can understand you. And you don't need to settle or play small to get any of that, okay? Dating apps do not define you. If you're serious about getting into a relationship, you have to keep your eyes peeled. You have to be very, 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 very clear about what your standards are, what your boundaries are, and what your criteria are, and lay that out like first thing. That's like, it should be forefront in your mind when you're swiping. And then when you get chatting with someone, find ways to reaffirm that, find ways to confirm that. And if they're not aligning, move on. And I know it's easier said than done. Trust me, I've been there. Sometimes I'm still there. I make mistakes still. Even though I'm learning these things, old habits die hard. And sometimes I want to go back and just revert and go back to operating from that place of scarcity, from that place of desperation and fear. But then I just remember all the things that I've learned, remember everything that I know about myself, and reaffirm what I want for myself from a potential partner. And if someone can't give me that, sayonara. Okay, I think I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate you staying tuned until the end. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you join the family. But yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time in another video. Bye.